If you were a kid who was into model trains in the late 1950s, heaven would have been the New York City showroom of Lionel. The showcase layout that Lionel designers had built in the middle of the showroom had several purposes. It was supposed to be visually stunning. It wasn't shy about being a sales tool used to show off Lionel products, and it was supposed to get people interested in the hobby. Okay, now imagine being a kid from Queens visiting that showroom over on East 26th Street. Wow doesn't even begin to describe it. So years later, Steve Garofalo decided he would try to recapture that feeling. He would attempt to recreate the Super O layout in his Las Vegas home.
I really like the Lionel showroom layout from the late 50s because that's what I remember most as a boy growing up. My first visit to the Lionel showroom was in 1959, that holiday season, and I remember seeing that layout in all its splendor. Having looked at the catalogs a year or two before that, seeing a large layout like that in person was just a tremendous wow, and always wanted to build something like that. At the time, in 1957 actually, Lionel introduced Super O track, and prior to that, it had a regular O-gauge track available for many, many years, going back to the 30s. The O-gauge track is 1.25 inches actually between the outside rails. And Super O-track was an attempt to make O-track, which in its template form is not very realistic, but it was an attempt to make it look more realistic, kind of paralleling the HO modelers, scale modelers type of track profile. Having their realistic track ties, their plastic ties on the Super O track. But it was a big marketing play by Lionel at the time, and I really liked it. I thought it added realism to the layout.
They say you can never go home, but Steve Garofalo gets pretty darn close. His 13 by 30 foot layout is proof that you can bring the past back to life. And by deciding that he didn't have to be a slave to every single historic detail, it allowed him to build a layout that some might argue is even better than the original. It presented him the opportunity to mix the classic with the contemporary. There are new trains and vintage trains, originals and recreations or reissues. There's a ballpark, but this one is animated. There's a drive-in movie theater, but this one has a crystal clear LCD screen with a hidden DVD player. And as far as accessories are concerned, there's so much more available now compared to what was on the market 50 years ago. It would be foolish not to take advantage of those options. By not strictly sticking with Lionel products, Steve is allowed to add to the ambiance, as well as use things that were used in his previous layouts. And that makes financial sense as well.
I took the basic track plan of Lionel back at that time, based on old photographs and some old footage, and copied that, but added modern electronics to it. In the old days, everything was increase the voltage on the track, the train goes faster. Today's electronics call for putting full voltage to the track and then using a digital signal, talk to individual engines and address them accordingly. So what I tried to do on this particular layout is take the old and the new and put them together. I have the old style throttle, and I could run trains the old-fashioned way. In fact, many of my trains are from the 50s, and I run them the old-fashioned way. But I also have newer engines made by Lionel and some of its competitors, MTH and Williams and Weaver, and actually run those through digital electronics. Same thing with the accessories. The accessories, interestingly, in the 50s never did work very well, but as a child I thought they were wonderful. I still think they're wonderful. But today, Lionel has recreated many of its accessories from the 50s, put in more sophisticated electronics, and they operate better. They look exactly the same as they did 50 years ago, but they operate better. So I have actually used a combination of old and new. And also, the newer ones are a lot cheaper than buying the old ones in good condition.
The control booth that Steve has put together is another visual centerpiece in the room, and another example of how old and new can be comfortably combined. There are post-war transformers with new Trainmaster components, and even a modern MTH digital control system.
The control panel combines the old and the new. It has 6 CW transformers, Lionel transformers, that supply all the power to the railroad. In addition to that, there are a number of digital controls. Digital meters that read the amperage and voltage to distribute the load appropriately across the layout. In addition to that, I have DCS controls made by MTH and Lionel TMCC controls. So I could run both old style trains and the newer digital control trains.
It all allows Steve to run a classic layout for his own enjoyment and the enjoyment of everyone who gets to visit this flashback.